Are we gonna leave doors closed? I said no ice.
Top 5 chickens.
What? I don't even understand.
Oh my god! If I had $1 for how many times I'd given people ice that said no ice, I'd have like probably $100. Honestly, yeah.
No, you got a lot of water.
Yeah, you can have my Topo Chico. Here, there you go.
Do you get water for people often?
Yeah, I do.
That's you're very hospitable.
I'm half hospitable because I get it from them incorrectly.
Correct. That's a good point. You're hospitable with a short attention span, or zero, or just complete apathy.
I don't. That's really what it is. I don't think it's attention span related. I think it's more just like completely consumed with another thought. As soon as I ask, I stop caring. Yeah.
Well,
you can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand.
Sure. Okay. So, thank you for doing this. Thanks for coming on the Foxtails. I asked you to send me 3 topics that you were passionate about or wanted to talk about. I think you sent me somewhere in the realm of 10 or 15. Classic, you overachieving.
I just thought we'd just keep it going.
Yeah. So first, to just kind of set the background, I wanted to cover how we met, and then kind of where you came from before. Just a little background, right? So people know kind of how we know each other, and then what brought you to that point, and then what brought us together. So, where'd you grow up? What got you into cooking?
Necessity.
Yes. I love that. We'll touch on that later.
We will touch on necessities later. Don't touch my necessities, please. However, I grew up in Texas. Grew up in South Texas. I was born in McAllen. Spent the first, 10, 12 years of my life in South Texas. I had parents who split up very young. My dad was 17 when I was born. My mom was 18. So we were a little nomadic, I guess, transient. We had homes. Yeah, we had homes. We were not homeless. But it was always questionable. And right on that line. No, there's a lot of love. And my grandparents, my grandfather was a Methodist preacher. My grandmother was preacher's wife. She was a teacher as well as a museum curator. She did many things. But
a Jane of all trades.
Correct. But the leading force of their life was my grandfather and his church and wherever, and she was always involved in the church. So they moved around a lot. Their circuit, as the churches operate on, was South to Central Texas. So as we were moving around, I would sometimes have stints at my grandparents' house. It might have been in Elgin or Bastrop or Austin or McAllen or Mission.
So you were just like,
I was just
kind of plug and played like Central and South Texas until you were.
And my mother moved to Chicago when I was 5.
Okay.
And then I would spend about a third to a little bit more of the year with her.
So summers and holidays, basically.
Summers and holidays, long weekends.
Sure.
And that was back when flying was cheap and you could do it.
And you could be like 7 and like get on a plane.
5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 5 was the age.
Actually, that's what I did too.
And it was very different.
Yeah. Pre 9/11.
Pre 9/11. Pre a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I flew around a lot. Spent all the holidays and summers with my mom in Chicago. However, at a certain point that ended.
Sure.
To continue with my dad, I left the house pretty early.
What's pretty early?
I mean, I was living in Austin at 16.
Got it.
So.
And what were you doing for a living then?
I worked at Wiener's department store. Are you familiar with the Wiener's?
I am.
Yeah, I don't think they're around anymore.
No.
Terrible name.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to sell.
True, but
could be a great name for a certain market.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, if you're at the ballpark and you're trying to sell some dogs, Wiener's a great name.
Wiener's is a great name. I agree with that. However, for discount kind of name brand clothing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that has a little to do with the longevity.
Yeah.
Worked there, sold shoes. I've worked in the shoe department.
Nice. Not surprising.
Yeah. Agreed. I had
Is
done
that where you developed your passion for shoes? Was it at Wiener's? Was that the inception?
No, my whole life, as a younger teenager than 16, which is only a few years, I worked in skate shops. After Wiener's, I worked at the skate shop here and started working in kitchens.
Yeah.
Again, more out of necessity than anything.
Yeah. Go ahead.
More out of necessity than anything. I had literally no education.
Yeah.
No skills. And
you had this.
I had a brain. I do have a brain.
Yeah. That's a skill. More than many have, I might say.
Yeah. I had the tenacity to get out of bed and and go to work.
Yeah.
At that age, and did so. My goal was, I dropped out of school when I was 15. I literally have a ninth grade education. My goal was to come to Austin, get my GED, and start college. It was strange that I had taken that less traditional route of the miseducation.
Sure.
And because my father's a PhD and he's a professor. My grandmother was a teacher. My grandfather's a teacher. My mother is a teacher. She has numerous women in my mother's side of the family have master's degrees.
Yeah.
And that's low income Latina women going and pushing their way through school.
So you come from a family of educated people.
I do. And I chose a different route. I just didn't really.
What was your parents and grandparents and I guess family's perception of that?
I mean, there was
both then and today.
I mean, there were different perceptions of it. I think my father understood, but he's who I grew up with for the most part.
Kind of knew you best.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said earlier, we were very mobile.
Yeah.
I didn't go to a single school for more than 1 year.
Wow.
After I went to kindergarten at one school, I went to first grade at one school, like second, third, and fourth were a school, and then every year afterwards until I left school, I went to a different school. So I had zero connection. I had zero roots. I had no interest.
Zero reason to want to keep doing it. Also, probably. I mean, that's.
And then when it got to the point where I kind of had, my father's a great father, lots of love. My grandparents were pretty heavily involved in my life, but there was a lot of autonomy.
Yeah.
Throughout my childhood, or adolescence rather, I made all sorts of decisions.
And you took the reins of that autonomy.
I did.
Yeah.
And so I ended up in Austin at 16. Came here to, like I said, GED, community college. I did that. Within a few weeks of a ninth grade education, took my GED, scored in the top 2%. Woo.
Yeah.
And
not surprised.
And applied to school,
sure,
community college, and went there and decided that I still didn't like school.
Yeah, you kept trying to force this thing that was not you, essentially, because of perceived expectations, or a perceived path of success, right?
Yeah, and just disinterest in the typical formal education system, I guess. In retrospect, so I had more interest in skateboards.
Yeah.
and hip hop and graffiti and sneakers, right?
Yeah, totally.
So that's where my interests lie. Still do.
And then you added food to that, and that pretty much rounds out today.
Out of necessity, correct. And then started working in restaurants at a young age. Was like, cool, let's push this. There is a romantic story to this.
So why?
When I met my partner, I was like, you want story A or story B?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's story A, which is the story I just told you, and there's story B, which is what I would tell her parents.
Yeah,
there is a romantic aspect of the chef life. There really is. There was
totally.
I had a desire to work in restaurants at a young age, and I had this romanticized view of what it could and would be.
Yeah.
And really had a lot of interest in that. So out of necessity and low education, I knew I could go into kitchens. When I went into kitchens, it worked.
Natural.
It worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it, and I still love it, and I am a restaurant person, right?
Yeah. Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that took you there. At what point would you say you're like, okay, you're going through this kitchen thing, you're cooking, and then you say, okay, cool, I'm going to consciously make the decision to make a career out of this. Mm-hmm. What point? How old were you when you made that decision?
When Lisa Ward was pregnant with Phillip Speer is when I made that decision to make a career.
20 years ago?
Yeah, I was 20.
Yeah.
So a few years of living in Austin, fucking around. Yeah. And believe me, I still did plenty more fucking around.
Yeah.
But fucking around with not a lot of direction, working in kitchens, enjoying it.
More directed fucking around is what you did after.
Right, yeah. More concise. Yeah. Again, still enjoying, knowing that I would do this for a long time, but not. And there was also another epiphany moment where I worked with a certain chef who really showed me what being a chef could look like.
Yeah.
But like actually look like I knew what it could look like, but it was like,
this is actually like, here's a tangible example, and like I can achieve this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, And that chef's Sean Serkiel.
Yeah.
That was a couple years later when we opened Jean-Luc Bistro together. He was the first chef I worked for and with who was like, I was like, okay, yeah, I want this. And that changed, that continued to change that trajectory.
Yeah.
However, I had already made the decision that this would be my career.
But that was a turning point about what direction that career was going to go in, essentially.
Well, there was still a part of me at some point, even in my early 20s, late teens to early 20s, where I thought I could still make a career out of skateboarding.
Got it. Okay.
And I mean, I didn't think I could be a professional skateboarder, but I was managing a skate shop. I was managing a skate team. I was doing a lot of networking. And this was even pre-social media. Right?
Yeah. Also, all those things that you just mentioned are like so on brand for you. You like have all these like different kind of clubs of people. It's so your thing. I love it.
Did you and Trisha talk before this?
No,
because she's like, you like the clubs.
Yeah. You're really into affiliation.
Yeah,
the Chicago clubs.
Exactly.
Cool. So go ahead.
There's still a part of me who thought maybe there could be a career made out of this. So I was cooking, I was learning, I was also still in the skate shop, I was still skateboarding, I was still doing that, I was managing the team, we were doing demos, we were doing road trips, we were doing some amazing stuff. So I was working, there were times I was working part-times in the bakery in the morning, and then, in the afternoon and evening, skateboarding and partying and drinking and going back and just basically not sleeping or anything. And that was my life till about 37.
Which is go ahead and return that if you need to. We can edit this.
Sure.
So I like where that takes us, because that takes us to your first topic, right? Which is the intersection of hip-hop, skateboarding, and streetwear in modern day and common culture, as you put it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to me, I came up a little bit differently. I really like that topic. I skateboarded to the point where I was like, okay, I suck at this. And I was like, I want to be a BMX guy. And I was like, that's not cool. I'm not going to be a BMX guy. But still, obviously, was like really into hip-hop and just, I mean, the culture in general. And actually, Andrew and I talked about this, the producer. Shout out, Andrew. That's where basketball came in, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really interesting the way different kind of subcultures tie into hip hop, right?
Right.
So touch on what that was for you in regards to skating and hip hop and everything else.
I mean, it was just so interesting, right? Like you said, all the cross sections. Mm-hmm. The majority of, even when I was in smaller towns, like the majority of my dwelling spaces kind of, I was always on the streets, whether it was with a skateboard or walking the streets or hanging out, right? And then when I moved to some bigger cities, still same thing. It was always in a part of town that was not terrible by any means, but like a lot of concrete.
Yeah, totally.
Spent a lot. Then
small yards.
Yeah, and then spent time in Houston.
Yeah.
And then so I did skateboarding.
Houston's probably a really interesting city to skateboard in because it's so vast and has kind of really interesting like divided metropolitan areas, right? What parts of Houston did you skate in?
I mean, we would go to different neighborhoods, and the different neighborhoods and different parts of Houston had their own little crews, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So like we might drive out to Deer Park or Pasadena. We might go to the outdoor park in Humboldt. We might go downtown and skate. But it was always an event. Like, cool, we're gonna go downtown today. Yeah. We go and we skate downtown for hours, right? Yeah, cool. Or we're gonna go to the park. Or when the indoor park was built, Southside, we're gonna go to Southside. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And so it was always an event, and it was cool because you could travel to do so. And it was almost like it kind of set in the motion of like traveling to skate. Yeah. Because you would travel across this large city, sometimes drive 45 minutes an hour to get to a skate spot, right? Whereas like in Austin, you want to go skate, you just get on your board. Yeah. And you go skate. And you go skate. And you're here. Like, everything's here. Everything is so accessible. But I just think there's so many interesting cross sections between, especially like in the mid to later 90s with, when skate shoe, when the infusion of the street culture and a lot of that
street culture specifically do you mean?
Well, a lot of that coming from the hip hop culture. Okay. Street culture, a lot of graffiti culture. Yeah. Playing into the urbanness of skating.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Skateboarding went from in the 70s and 80s, and to very suburban and backyard
Like white boy surfer, like that whole vibe. Okay,
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And then into like more punk rock into the
Mm-hmm.
80s, right, which was still a little bit urban, and then into the 90s it became
More hip-hop.
much more like infused by street culture, streetwear culture, and hip hop. And
Do you think
the cross sections
happened
of that
as it moved out of California and
into
through
the
different
larger
cities in America?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the skate parks were pretty much disbanded through the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the early 90s, you took to the streets. And once you're on the street skateboarding, the whole culture changes because you're out in the streets and the cities, right? And so the suburban skate parks and backyard ramps are gone. People are going to the cities to skate,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet all sorts of people from every part of the city. And it's such a cross contamination of cultures.
Totally. I mean, it's really interesting too. Also, nice cross contamination reference. It's really interesting how I think the tension between like urban skateboarding and law enforcement is something that I always find fascinating because there is. It's I mean, even more than city by city, it's block by block, right? Like, are we going to enforce this or not? Like, are we going to say, okay, like this week or this month, we're going to let these kids skate here until it like pisses enough people off to move them someplace else, right?
Right.
And in many ways, it's actually a lot like how I think government treats homeless people.
Yeah.
You know, which is really interesting.
No, absolutely.
You know,
that's an interesting analogy, but I completely agree. It is. It's just kind of moving the problem around, which, I mean, into the later, like to early 2000s, where people started to get together and figure out how to build parks again.
Yeah.
And so now you have these more urban parks in parts of the city where you wouldn't have normally had them, right? So we have, House Park over here, which is an awesome park that was put together by the skateboarders of Austin.
Yeah.
Right. I was actually part of that whole coalition that put that together.
That's dope.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Mabel Davis Park, like Ella, my 21-year-old daughter, when she was 8, cut the ribbon with that mayor at that time, who I don't remember his name, for that Mabel Davis skate park, which is another part of Austin.
That's really cool.
And that's how that changed a little bit. There was a clear deficit when people, because of that, the law enforcement involvement, inevitably there's always some abuse of power there. Yeah. Inevitably, there's some defiance to authority there on the other side. So there's conflict points all around.
What's interesting to me is that there is this inherent thing of like, it's okay to ride a bike down something, but it's not okay to ride a skateboard on it. Right?
Well, there's multiple reasons. I mean, skateboarders are very specific. We're very different. We're all very different from each other, but we're looked at in a really specific way. But skateboarding is pretty destructive, honestly.
Sure. So I'm curious, as now a man who who's
built a building,
and like has perspective on like the value of property,
right,
and skateboarding as well. You know, like where do you land on that stuff?
Hopefully on my bolts.
Good answer. Really good answer.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, now that I'm part of the management of this whole property here, this
looks like some decent skating.
Okay,
like,
so
if it were not for the speed humps,
well, so those weren't there. Okay. So in the 90s, we skateboarded here. This building was actually vacant. So this garage down here, you can see where those speed bumps are. Yeah. That was a double-sided curb that went all the way down this garage that we used to board slide down.
Yeah.
And then we put ramps down here, and we skated down here all the time on the bottom of the McGarrett Assembly building now at 5th and Colorado.
So where you
just to give a little context
is now where your restaurant is.
Exactly. It's really
a really cool story.
We used to skate on this curb all the time. This is the only double helix parking garage in downtown Austin, and it's really hard and fun to skate down. Like this building is all of that, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it's super interesting, and I can look at it from a completely different perspective now, because now if somebody came over here and tried to slide on this double-edged curb here, which is still an amazing skate spot. My car's parked right there. Yeah. I'd be like, hey, dude, come on.
Yeah.
But then I would feel really shitty for that. Like, oh, man.
Yeah.
So I probably
would just a nice curb.
Yeah, it is a great curb.
Yeah.
People don't skate anymore. It's because we got Jack Luna up here.
Jack Luna crushes people.
Oh, my God.
That guy's an enforcer.
He is an enforcer.
Yeah.
He's just doing his job.
No doubt. Big shouts to Jack Luna.
Yeah. So... it's really interesting. It's very interesting, which is why I'm such a proponent for skate parks, because I think that now that people understand how to build skate parks and where you can put them, as long as they're not in the fucking suburbs that this kid can't get to because his mom's not, or dad, or whoever, guardian, older brother, isn't going to drive them to the suburbs and pay to go to the skate park, and then you're there, right? And you're only there for the entire day. Like, this is dope. When you have, you know, in the Austin, Round Rock, I'd say in a 20-mile radius of where we are right here, there are 5 cement free, high quality skate parks that people can go to.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so the cross section of these cultures came from the change of the skateboarding into a very urban activity. All sorts of people, you know, communicating with each other. Also, at that time, you know, when you are in these bigger cities and you're riding subways and there's graffiti culture, there's also just the inherent artistic culture of skateboarding. There's graphics on skateboards. There's sneakers, right? Well, I have 2 pairs of shoes because one's torn up, so I need another pair of shoes. Well, let's make these shoes look dope.
Would you travel with sneakers normally, or would you just wear what you had on your feet?
Well, when I was that age, I just wore what I had on my feet because that's all I could afford. Yeah. Right. But once I started working in shops, like we had the first SB account in all of Austin.
Oh, cool.
Right. Like, we set that account up with Dugan Baker. What's up, Dugan Baker? Who is
big shouts to Dugan Baker.
Who is the national rep for SB. Yeah. Right. The way Nike's set up, each department has its own president and their own. It's basically like a bunch of mini companies within Nike. But so, you know, at that point, it's like, okay, cool. Well, now Adidas is doing skate shoes, Nike's doing skate shoes, Vans is doing
the money.
Yeah, Vans is doing their Van Select, where they're doing, you know, there's all these collaborations. Sure.
How'd you feel about the Vans kitchen shoe?
I loved the idea. Functionality wise, I didn't like it at all. It was very uncomfortable. But I mean, I love the idea of it. I mean, the new Headley Bennett ones are kind of dope.
Well, what's interesting to me is that I think there was like a very obvious way to like take the classic Vans design and translate that into a kitchen shoe.
Yeah, because they had the waffle. Like, they had the waffle print already.
Yeah, exactly. With like some like really not that doctored kind of aesthetic and functionality, and the fact that they chose to take it in this like entirely different direction was a really weird creative choice to me. Yeah, you know, not for me either. Okay, so what's interesting to me about, I mean, so you touched on kind of this confluence of cultures, which takes us to, let's go back to 1993. Was it 93 or 94?
93.
Okay, so it's your opinion that the confluence of music,
I'm going to check something,
film,
I'm going to go into 1993 here,
and television.
Now we're going to look at this list.
Okay, so I'm curious because I did some research on this too. Okay. Now, music, I think it's really actually hard to argue. It's astonishing what came out in 1993. Like you have Tribe, you have Nirvana, like it's insane, you know?
Everything came out in 93.
Yeah.
Souls of Mischief.
I can also see the argument. Like, I can see it for movies. Like, I have a different opinion, but, like, certainly...
I thought you were going to say you can see the argument that possibly it was 1994, which I could see that argument,
That is one of the years, totally. Okay. Like,
because...
I think 93, 94, and 99.
93 was the innovation. 94 is when it really hit hard, right? But 93 was the best year.
When those movies were made is 93. It's
exactly. And when the albums were made. Totally. And like, it was like, to me, and I'm so
TV
grateful.
Is where I'm out. I can't. What, like the best TV in 93?
Well, what year did maybe I think maybe I'm I think everything happened in 1993. When was The Wire made?
2000. Like, you know,
when was Sopranos made?
99. Yeah.
When was how about that show with the morticians? Not the Addams Family. The one with.
Are you talking about the HBO doc?
Yeah.
With like the super creepy doctor,
like 6 Feet Under or something like that.
Oh no, that was post Sopranos actually. That started like halfway through the Sopranos, and then I mean, really the only thing that was pre Sopranos and Wire was Oz, as far as like.
And Oz was more like 97.
And Oz was a tough. I mean, like you can definitely make. I think
fine.
It being the golden age of like sitcom comedy, you know, because you had like Cheers had finished, you had Frasier, you had
True Romance.
Yeah, True Romance was great. I mean, Seinfeld obviously was like just hitting its stride.
Yeah.
Let's talk about.
I was thinking more like.
But you're saying like okay, like
series, like more like. sitcoms, right? Like more like series, like HBO series and Showtime series, right?
Okay,
That's
so
when we really started to see some of those. But maybe it was a couple years later. Maybe I'm old.
Yeah.
Okay, my timelines get a little. But music and film. We're gonna go back to music.
We're gonna go back to music and film because there, I think that's a really strong argument.
Okay, but I want to get. Hold on.
Okay.
We didn't really tie up the confluence.
Okay.
Of street culture, skateboarding, and its influence, or basically the build into current culture now. I mean, in the mid '90s is when you started seeing like Tribe doing Daylight in the Spring commercial, right?
So
like
so
you would see.
So when did it switch to you, and what was the conduit? Because I think there's some really interesting common ground here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think when it went mainstream, I think was '96.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was post Biggie, post Tupac, and it was the '96 NBA draft where all those players you had Iverson come into the league, you had Kobe come into the league, and it was the first time where like these stars were like, okay, cool, like Jordan's gone, right? Like at least for a little bit, right? And all these guys are like, well, actually that was the year that Jordan came back. But all these guys were like, okay, cool, like now it's a different image, right? Because it's this thing that had been built upon for, I mean, years and years and years. And those things spoke to each other in certain ways. But we had this really interesting point where, you know, you had MTV, which was really like starting to reach a critical mass as far as it being, you know, something that drove pop culture in general and not just young people, right? And how all those different aspects were speaking to one another in a really interesting way, you know?
Agreed. And I think media had a lot to do with that, right? And the only media at that point being MTV, VH1, and my shoes are here.
Got it.
Should
you want to go get them? Yeah, go get them.
Yeah. Can we pause?
Yeah, totally. Go pause.
All right. Hurt your teeth?
Woo! Look at that fire.
What you got?
These are some classics. Jordan 3s, reverse colorway.
It is reverse colorway. Have you seen my Jordan 3 dessert?
Yeah. It's well documented.
Yeah. It's fucking dope though.
Yeah,
I mean that's so. I mean, and
the concrete part.
So
of
if
it
we
is the
can go,
part.
it is, and we can go into that more of like that cross section of like in food as well.
Totally.
I mean, I did
100%.
I did an entire series with a hip hop star. I did an entire dinner with Bun B and with Dan the Automator.
Yeah.
So a couple.
Yeah. They're a couple?
They're not. So let's clarify right now. We did not say.
No, we're not breaking news here.
No.
Okay. Back to 1993.
I wish.
Right? 93 till infinity.
No, I know.
You know?
It's an amazing song.
So I want to touch on something real quick and then we'll get on to something else, okay? While we're talking about hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
What's your top 5?
Oh man, that's the worst question. So, because it's like saying what's your favorite burger, right? Yeah. Like that's so hard to answer because they're my top 5.
I'm not asking you what the best burger is. I'm asking you what your favorite burger is.
I understand that.
Top 5.
I understand
right now.
That.
It can change. It can change next week.
Right now.
Right now, yeah.
My top 5. Yeah. My top 5 albums. My top 5 MCs. My top 5 groups. My top 5. The top 5 that I've played the most.
Okay, all right. If you wanna count Wu-Tang as a singular artist, fine, go for it. Okay.
Well, not one person in Wu-Tang would be in my top 5.
Oh, interesting.
Now Wu-Tang combined. No. Maybe.
I mean, it's obviously Ghostface.
No, it'd be RZA. Oh. I'm sorry, Jizza.
Your swords are showing.
It would be.
Okay.
It'd be the Genius.
It's a great record. Was that 95 or 96?
96.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, go.
Just like that. Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Top 5.
I actually have this conversation with myself often.
Me too.
Like probably more than once a week.
Me too.
I'll be listening.
And it's totally. I mean, listen, I'm not asking you to...
So are we going back? You said let's go back to 93. Are we talking about the top 5 of the 90s?
Let's do both. I'm down to have that conversation.
Okay, because that's different. Because Drez from Black Sheep is definitely... And are we talking just MCs or are we talking the groups? Because for me, it's not Black Sheep, but it is Drez. He, I think, is one of the best MCs of all time, one of the most underrated.
Sure.
His wordplay, his delivery, I've seen him live multiple times. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with De La as a group because I don't think one really outshines the other, although Pasta Noose gets most of... I
would agree with that
and Pasta Noose is fucking amazing.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
And they're great live.
And they're amazing live. I've seen them many times live and have enjoyed every one. I mean... But, you know, if we're still talking about the 90s, there was so much...
I mean, Tribe is a...
Yeah, but... Sure. However, Q-Tip solo was trash. Five Dog solo was trash.
Exactly.
Right? They were a group. That was amazing. And the first 3 albums they made were mind-blowing. They're innovative.
So
they set the whole... But no, Tribe is not in my top 5.
Let me set some context, okay? So let's say highest ceiling, right? You know, like... Doesn't have to have, you know, like 5 great albums, right? But like, you know, enough songs to be like, cool. Like, that's enough for me to consider this person very skilled.
Right.
There's no doubt, right?
Right.
I mean, interesting conversation. I mean, you and I have the Eminem conversation a lot. I mean, Slim Shady LP came out in 99.
I know, I was going to say, he's not 90s to me, though. Although the first time I heard him...
Well, he was on Ruckus.
Eminem.
Big shouts.
Was in actually that tape that was circulating before anyone heard like this tape was circulating, had all these really crazy songs on it.
Are you talking about the Ruckus collab tape?
I don't even know. It was just somebody sent it to us at the skate shop.
Okay.
It was literally a tape.
Yeah.
And we put it in the tape player and we played it over and over and over again. We're like, who is this guy? And
got it. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
And then
now.
we
that was early Eminem.
Yes. It was like that 20 Ways and like all those like crazy songs, right? That were really hardcore. Like, who is this guy? And then we heard, you know, a few months later, where probably at the time felt like years, but a few months later,
the Some Shady LP came out.
that Dr. Dre had picked up this guy.
Yeah.
Of course, it was obviously a whole thing, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, very well played, guys. You know, and yeah, is Eminem in my top 5 of MCs that I want to listen to all the time? No.
Same.
Not at all.
Same.
Do I appreciate the things that he has created? Sure.
The unique skill set?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it's funny because like on Instagram stories a lot, I'll like make Eminem references that no one catches.
Oh, I catch them. I catch them.
But it's not someone that I love. You know what I mean?
Well, it's also, I mean, I think he's an artist who you have to be in a specific mood.
Although 8 Mile is an amazing movie.
Is it? Shout to Brittany Murphy.
Amazing is a little okay, but anyway, so top 5, like everyone's top 5, right? What's everyone's top 5? Tupac, Nas, Biggie, fucking M, and
Jay-Z is not in my top 25 anymore.
No.
I used to be such a fucking Jay-Z stan, and like I listened to it enough to just be like, yo, this shit is real average.
Do you listen to albums or you just skim through it?
Really good.
Thanks.
Really, like really good. Well played. Okay, so let's do 90s and let's do all time.
But I do have to say Nas but again, like look at my age and how much I've
like perspective is everything, right? Like we're gonna have different lists because of that.
Exactly, but also like I remember, and I'm not trying to sound like that dude, but like Eminem's influences were in my top 5. Sorry, Nas's influences were in my top 5, right? Yeah. Between Cool G Rap and Rakim.
Rakim, for sure.
You know, and that's what I was really getting excited about.
Yeah.
Nas, don't get me wrong, Illmatic, life-changing album. So if you want to look down and be like, who put out albums that completely changed everything and just got everyone to listen? Got everyone to listen?
Yeah.
Nas did with Illmatic.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nas, not much else, dude.
What do you think is Nas's best song? Because I actually don't think his best song is even on Illmatic, which is interesting.
Nas's best song, without a doubt, hands down.
You're going to say New York State of Mind, aren't you?
Absolutely.
See, I disagree. I think The Message is his best song. But Illmatic
for
is his best record.
sneakers.
I mean,
20s of Buddhas and bitches with beepers. Come on.
I'm not over here saying it's fucking trash. You know, I'm not.
New York State of Mind is the best song, hands down.
That's like the coldest Nas take of all time, though. Like, just
I don't care.
Okay.
He just did it. And he opened that fucking album with that. I remember the first time.
That's true.
I literally remember the first time I heard it. I was sitting in Jay's car. Mm-hmm. He had 4 6x9s in the back.
With Silent Bob in the back.
we had this
the 90s Jay and Silent Bob Clerks.
He had this wooden tape deck. Like you put all your cassettes in it, and it was in the front seat. And he had a Civic because everyone had every skater in the mid '90s had a fucking Honda Civic.
Was it a hatchback?
Oh, of course.
Some people
That's where the 6x9's box was.
First of all, some people had CRXs too.
Okay. And so every day, because I always rode shotgun, every day I would get in fucking, because Jay was my best friend.
Did you play the shotgun game? I've met Jay, by the way.
Yeah, no, I had all-time shotgun.
Yeah.
There's no fucking game.
Okay.
That was my spot.
All-time shotgun.
I mean, he was pretty much my life partner at the time, right? And fucking, but it was the worst because there was a fucking big wooden thing that you should be mounted on a wall full of cassettes. And I would always like step over it. I mean, I'm pissed. We fucking stepped on the new Beat Nuts CD. Yeah. Well, I mean, tape. And also, Intoxicated Demons, one of the best albums of all time. And Fash in that was fucking amazing. Fashion, he had some of the best, illest rhymes of all time. Another underrated album. Amazing production. Yeah. Like, that album kills it. Actually, go back to what I was saying about Drez.
Yeah.
Fucking, there's a Drez and Faj. Drez and Black Sheep and Beat Nuts. Yeah. They have a couple albums together. Let the Horns Vote being one of them. That's fucking amazing.
Send it to me. I actually haven't heard that. I'm surprised. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's a Chi Ali song.
Really?
Yeah.
That's low key really random.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No Equal, which you can't find. You can't find on anything. No Equal. The Beat Nuts song is one of the best songs ever written of all time.
Like, it has a tribe.
Yeah, and it has a tribe sample through it. It's fucking sick. Anyways, so I remember getting in the car.
Yeah.
We'd always get them on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Right. It was that's when the albums came out. We got them at Music Mania. Yeah. Right over here next to Fiesta, right by Active Athlete. After the Athlete was still there. Go in there, find low.
Big shouts to Curvin's Barbershop too, where I got my haircut for like 5 years when I first moved to Austin. It's like the first place that I moved to Austin. I like shopped around for barbershops and just kept getting my head fucked up every place I went. And finally, and like Curvin's, that place has been around for 40 years. Yeah. And that's where. So remember those Nike Air Max 90 ACG editions that I used to wear like all the time back in the day when we lived in Houston. That's where I got those. Active Athlete right there.
Yeah, Active Athlete's the shit. What people don't understand, it's the spillover store from the 2 Houston shops that are actually legit sneaker stores. They get the spillover stuff, and you can go in there and find fucking gold.
The deals there are insane. Because
well, the guy who owns it is like, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's like, I mean, you can talk any deal into him. And
totally.
When he knows you're actually a sneakerhead, he's all into it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I sat down. So it was on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Got fucking high as shit.
Of course.
Got in the car, got in the Civic.
Yeah.
And sat in the front seat, my feet like this. Yeah.
As we do.
Yeah. And then turned that shit on, and that intro came in, and then went right into New York State of Mind, and my mind was blown.
Yeah.
And that moment I'll never forget. And whenever I hear that song, it does that for me. And then, so that's probably part of the reason why I think of it, because it was such a hard hit at that time.
Yeah.
The amount of first albums, first songs, first artists that I ever heard, Shotgun, of that 1993 white Honda Civic hatchback with the 4 6x9 box in the back with my feet up like this. I remember them all. It was.
Yeah, I guess I have those moments too. That's really interesting. I mean, Wu-Tang Forever was that for me.
Yeah.
Like, because the intro to Wu-Tang Forever is insane.
Yeah.
You know, as much as 36 Chambers like kind of set the stage for everything, you're like, it was almost like when you went to see Jackie Brown in the theater, right? Like you saw Pulp Fiction and you're like, oh my God, like this is the sequel to like the illest shit that I've ever fucking seen. And I'm so excited. Right. And then it actually delivers, right?
It does. Yeah, it did. And what year was that? 95?
I think Wu-Tang Forever was 96 or 7.
Well, no, but Jackie Brown. What year was Jackie Brown?
Jackie Brown was 98 or 99.
Was it later?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, during that time, we had just moved to Austin. I was 16, about to turn 17.
Yeah.
Zero accountability.
Yeah.
For my life.
Yeah.
Right.
And really enjoying that.
Yeah. And within a year or so after Wieners, I was working at the skate shop.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hot deal, right? Like we had the fucking gig.
Yeah.
We had the skate team. Every show that came to Austin, and that's when Austin was, in the 90s.
It was a real live music town.
It was a real live. It had been for a while,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying it was made in the 90s by any means.
No, but
but that's when the hip hop scene came through.
Yeah.
That's why the Catfish stations and emos and all these places were doing
Mm-hmm.
these hip hop shows, and the crews that were the promoters that were bringing the shows were like just young dudes who were really heavy into the scene. They're like, let's bring shows, and you could do it at that time.
Yeah,
and I
caught the tail end of that when I moved here.
I saw it, and we got into all the shows, right?
Yeah.
And we would do the in stores at our shop, at the skate shop, because that was again that confluence of streetwear, hip hop, graffiti culture,
and how they spoke to each other,
right.
and
skateboarding,
and created value for one another.
Oh, absolutely. And I saw everyone. I mean, I saw every person you could think of, from Wu-Tang in full in its entirety.
I saw that was when ODB was still alive, right?
Yeah.
Was that in '98?
That show that I'm talking about specifically it was earlier than that.
Okay.
It might have been 7.
Okay. I might have seen the same tour in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
That was the second concert I went to. The first one was Guns N' Roses. I was 9.
Nice.
Tough parenting decision.
Yeah.
And then I saw Wu-Tang at, what was that place in Albuquerque, Andrew? Sunshine?
Sunshine Theater.
Yeah, Sunshine Theater. And they had to put a chain link fence up in front of the stage just so shit wouldn't get out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Shit still got out of hand. Someone got stabbed in the face with a whiskey bottle, and they had to call off the fucking concert halfway through.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's Albuquerque.
Yes.
That's Albuquerque.
Wow.
On that note, let's talk about crime shows. Okay.
Well, I just know you love crime shows so much. So I love that too.
That was a
gimme. That was a gimme for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation because I'm gonna bet that your favorite crime show of all time is The Wire.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's objectively probably the best. Yeah. What are some other of your favorites? Would you say?
I mean, I love Law and Order.
Actually, me too.
I mean,
it's like calming in a weird way.
Yeah, I can sit down.
Yeah.
Okay, the last time I sat down at home and had multiple shows play in a row, I don't remember. Right.
Okay.
I can't remember that time. I can't remember having a marathon.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Were you? So have you not really been a binge watcher in the Netflix era?
I have the desire to be a binge watcher in the Netflix era. Sure. I have not made it happen.
Got it.
I have binged watched shorter shows, Parks and Rec,
totally,
right, or Arrested Development, or something like that.
Yeah.
But even then, it's a few episodes. Also, I fall asleep a lot.
I don't know. Maybe it's an age thing because I was used to I mean, shit. 5 years ago, I would make fun of you all the time, like, oh, Phillip's asleep again.
Yeah.
And it will like happen to me like mid-text conversation at like 10:30 at night now. It's like really embarrassing. And then like I wake up to his text message. All right, cool. Have a good night, asshole. Cool. Awesome.
Oh, dating.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about dating a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Good. We're only like a fifth way through this list.
I know.
I know.
So tell me why you think The Wire is the best crime show of all time, in your opinion.
Oh, because so many crime shows, even some of the amazing ones like Sopranos, right, were so one note. Like the depth in which they really tried to cover everything on The Wire is amazing, right? It's like,
so I think probably the most polarizing thing about The Wire, because I mean nobody's out here being like, yo, The Wire sucks, that shit's garbage, you know, like it's pretty widely accepted as great. I think the one thing that people have a hard time with is season 2, right? Because you go through this incredible story, you get to know McNulty, you get to know Avon, you get to know Stringer, you get to know Dee, you get to know all the characters, right? And like the whole situation with Wallace happens, you know, that whole first kind of, I guess, passage of things happens. Mm-hmm. And then, bam, you're on the docks.
Right.
With like Greek people and like Polish people. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, what the fuck is this?
Right.
You know? And then, okay, there's this like dead shipping container of hookers, like what's going on? Like this is, and so how do you feel about season 2?
Well, that's got me excited Like, oh, this is gonna go beyond just inner city fucking Baltimore.
Totally.
Like, let's go a little further.
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? Where?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the roundedness. That's part of the well-roundedness that I'm speaking of. It's looking, and it's that's when you really got at the intro to more of the government side. You dug a little bit deeper into the force, dug a little bit deeper into councilmen, and just all the corruption on the government and city side, which was super interesting and exciting to me, and then how that parlayed back eventually onto the ground level, into the street.
Yeah, totally.
Into the projects.
Yeah, and then so rank your favorite Wire seasons in order.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, so season 3 though, because you're kind of getting back on track, right? And it's exciting.
Totally.
Right?
It's like, oh shit, we're back, right?
Yeah. And that excitement.
But like there's a shakeup because like, okay, cool, like, like the Barksdale crew is like kind of taking a hit, and like you got like Marlo Stanfield coming up and that whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And Marlo was exciting, right? And then what isn't season? I mean, he was a little exciting. Wasn't season 3 the first introduction?
I would argue that he was a lot of things.
Was it Snoop the season 3 introduction?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
She was fun.
Yeah.
Who else? What's his fucking? I need to refresh.
Slim Charles.
No,
not Joe.
No, not Joe. No, on the Force. The son of God, what the fuck is his name? The dumb
Presbolewski.
Yeah, Presbolewski.
Yeah,
his introduction was season 3.
No, he was season 1. So he came in season 1, and remember he was on the original task force.
That's right. Yeah.
He let off his gun
in
like the first couple episodes in the office, and then like he got his gun back at the end of the season, I think.
That's right.
And then season 2 is when his stepdad like created the detail on Frank Sabatka.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
I'm rewatching season 2 right now, so it's all super fresh for me.
It is. Yeah, my girlfriend has not seen The Wire besides the first couple episodes of the first season, so that's something that's on the list of things to do. And I haven't rewatched in a couple years.
I feel like you're really letting her down there.
I know. Well, going back to the whole
as a partner.
I know, but going back to the whole, I don't have a lot of time. And she doesn't like falling asleep to TV.
I don't either. What's your stance on TVs in the bedroom?
I mean, I currently have a TV in my bedroom.
Okay. So is it like a yes, I'm into it, or like a I don't know how I feel about this?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. No TVs in the bedroom, no food in the bedroom, in my opinion. It's for two things.
Right, but if you're gonna have a TV in the bedroom, it's kind of fun to have a little snack. And
exactly my point. Yeah, one leads to the other.
One does lead to the other.
It needs to be a clean line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
there's a little free relationship advice for you.
I know, but what it changes when you have children, right? Because then you have and especially if you have multiple children, because you have the TV that everyone watches, right? The family room TV.
Yeah.
And then you have your TV that you put in the bedroom where you can go watch your more adult programs.
Fair point.
So if I had a house, more of a setup to entertain the fact that I could have an adult TV room, I would probably have that.
Yeah.
Right? And then not have a TV in the bedroom.
Okay.
But I can't watch The Wire. I can't lock myself away from my children and watch The Wire at 8 p.m. in the living room.
I would say that all of your kids, how old is Trisha's?
4 and 8. 5. He'll be 5 in
okay.
about 6 weeks.
Well, then I can't say the statement I was going to say. I was going to say, I think you're in Wire territory officially.
No,
four is not.
Yeah.
4 is not.
So
8's borderline. I would say 10 is.
At a previous house I had, no TV in the bedroom, TV in the man cave area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, you have a TV room.
Yeah. And the family TV.
Okay, let's get back to Wire seasons.
Sorry. Okay.
I would argue, if I may, I'll see if you agree with me. I would go 1, 3, 2, 5, 4.
I would probably do 3 and then 1.
3 and then 1 and then
because it's starting to really 3's integrating everything and it's starting to get exciting. There's more to follow.
Totally agree with all those things. I think there's a sentimental value to.
Well, it's like New York State of Mind.
Yeah, totally. I remember the first time I watched The Wire. You know when the first time I watched The Wire was? When we opened Uchi Houston.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So I got down there. Remember when we got down there and I was like, okay, cool. We're just going to sit here with our dicks in our hands for the next month and just like almost drown in this torrential downpour of just flooding. And so I just locked myself in my little apartment off of Alabama Street. That was a couple doors down from a whorehouse.
Yep.
And just banged out The Wire. And yeah, it was just a freaking transformative experience. At a time at Uchiko, James Dumapit and I, big shout out to James Dumapit.
Does he have? Are we gonna do a?
We probably should at some
an
point.
episode.
Yeah, we probably should. We started the prep list we would make at Uchiko every day. We would name people after The Wire.
Yeah,
but we wouldn't give hints.
Yes.
They would have to figure it out.
I remember that.
It was really fun.
Yeah,
it was really fun. Okay, let's keep it moving. This is a really good one. How has urbanism taken over corporate America?
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to the first subject, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, you see it
and kind of all the subjects, honestly.
And all subjects, and it really has. I mean, you see it in even.
Well, first define urbanism as far as how, because there's like a couple different, I would say, definitions of that. They're like widely expressed in pop culture that are kind of different. So how are you defining urbanism?
Again, probably going more into like street culture.
Okay.
Streetwear culture.
Okay.
And more of, again, like when you talk about, for example, high design aprons in the kitchen, right? Vans Collaborations kitchen shoes. The knife packs that are denim with brass, brass brads and leather, what do you call those, straps?
Yeah.
Things of the sort, high design items, which I think a lot of that came from streetwear culture.
Ooh, really interesting point. Yeah. Okay.
I think most of it came from sneaker culture, streetwear culture.
No, I like that.
Right.
Cool.
Even saying, okay, cool. We don't need, the urbanism that I'm talking about is like, okay, instead of getting, and I'm right now relating it to kitchen. However, you can do it. You can go through, I think, and I've thought about it going through, because I even thought about medical field, et cetera, and like uniforms of.
So essentially the idea that like, okay, we're going to take this thing, right, that like perceivably has no sauce or flavor to it, right? And we're going to swag it out, right? And that concept being applied in a monetizable way to the aesthetic of different fields and industries, right?
100%.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And then specifically, I mean, what I have most experience with currently is kitchens, right?
And also generally.
And generally, yeah. Absolutely. But you see...
a lot of medical experience.
Yeah, tons. I mean, a good example of that is Tillet. I mean, do you remember when Tillet came about? And they're like, we're going to create clothing that is cool, that you can wear in the kitchen, that has some comfort, but you can also wear out.
They've done a really good job, I think. Also, shout out to Tillet. I think the quality of their product started in one place and is significantly better today. And yet they have evolved their branding in a way that is really smart and effective, and I think a little bit cleaner now. But they haven't lost those like kind of like slightly streety, New York roots that I think is what made them like initially appealing and like kind of counterculture to everything else.
And when in those New York roots, and again, when I say urbanism, I'm talking about literally the urban feel and street feel of high fashion in everything, but that goes into corporate America as well. And just even through like, I think a lot of it has to do with social media, the kind of the show off culture that we have created.
Well, this is a great segue, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
This show off culture that we've created, where it's like, you go out with a pack of cooks from the restaurant who are all making.
Is that how they're formally called in the brigade system? A pack?
A pack, yeah.
Yeah, got it. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. A pack
they're like wolves.
They are like wolves. I would say a pride, but
okay.
Not very lioness. But you go in and you say, okay, cool. Well, this guy has makes just barely a livable wage, and even
Sure.
that is questionable depending on where you live and what you're making.
No doubt.
Because there is quite a swing on that.
Yeah.
I think it's all tightening up in these last couple of years.
Yeah.
But when this kind of began, like, okay, why are you spending, $300 on a knife bag, $80 on an apron? You can go down to A Smart. You can get a Cook shirt and some checks and some clogs for under $100 and be fine. But it's like this. It's like
but if you walk into a good kitchen and you're dressed in A Smart gear, you're not getting that job.
I disagree. If it's clean and pressed, I totally disagree.
Okay, fine. I'll rephrase it. You created an uphill battle for yourself based on visual perception.
I mean, I hired you.
I was the polar opposite end of that spectrum, though.
I know.
Yeah.
Literally.
But I think ultimately though that was you perceived on a superficial level a good cultural fit, which is to say you're running this fancy restaurant band and here's this fancy guy, right? Okay,
right.
Cool. Like, let's make these two pieces fit together,
Yeah.
So like there was
for
continuity
sure, but I
there.
think if you can, I think if you can come in and you're put together enough,
sure,
and it's clean and pressed, and I don't think it's an uphill battle.
Okay,
I really don't.
What do you think the line of like, okay, someone comes in, let's just say for a cook position, like let's not say sous chef or I mean CDC and everything, and like the line of like, okay, this dude's like too fancy. Like, what are some giveaways where you're like, okay, like what are we doing here?
I remember, this is a funny story. I remember someone coming in staging at Jean-Louis Bistro. This was in the 2000,
sure,
maybe 99, maybe 2000.
Yeah,
and he opened up his tool bag, and we didn't all have tool bags back then, right?
Yeah.
Like he opened his tool bag, and he had a little balloon whisk, and he had his own immersion blender.
Oh, he traveled with an immersion blender.
Yeah,
wow.
In his knife bag, and he was there for stage.
Yeah.
And I kept calling him fancy tools. And I was like, this guy's not gonna fit. Fucking fancy tools over here. Funny story. Fast forward.
Who was Fancy Tools? Do we know Fancy Tools? Are we getting there?
Fast forward 5 years. I go and spend a couple years at Jean-Louis Bistro. I go to Aquarella. I do these things. I go to Houston.
Yeah.
Come back. Open Starlight, which was right over here, and do all these things. Maybe fast forward 6 years even.
Sure.
I go for an interview at the next restaurant that I ended up spending over a decade at, and I walk in for the interview. Well, first of all, I remember calling Tyson Cole and being like, "Hey, I hear you guys actually want a pastry chef.
Yeah,
I'm available." With the expectation to be like, "Cool,
interesting." I mean, I think what's interesting about how you describe that is that's totally on brand for you. I mean, especially then, and also your perspective on it now.
Yeah, and he was so awkward back then. He's like, "Who's this? Who's this?" Oh, he's Phillip Speer.
Yeah.
I'm your guy. Like, I'm ready. Like,
yeah.
I'm good. Like, I don't. It's cool. Like, they know.
Like, we can work together.
Yeah,
now.
they know I'm coming.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, you can come interview. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
So I go do a stage. And,
yeah.
And I stop.
What was a stage like for a pastry chef there then? That's interesting. Like, what'd you do? Did you just do a tasting or?
I did a tasting. Yeah.
Okay. So did you work service at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did it.
What station did you work pastry during service?
Pastry.
Okay.
I mean, there wasn't a pastry station. I mean, it was at Uchi proper. It was right there in the fucking corner right there.
Yeah.
Like, I worked at the station. Working at a station for me was like,
yeah.
There was no question of that. I did the tasting, right?
Yeah.
And did a good tasting.
Yeah. What'd you make? What was the thing that you were like most psyched about that you made?
I did a corn dessert.
Of course you did.
And that was new then.
Yeah.
I did corn panna cotta. Yeah. Corn
I also did. I primarily blame you, for people making really bad vegetable desserts because because you have like a really deft hand in understanding the line of like sweetness and flavors that do it don't work, and how to take unique other flavors and like kind of round out the picture. And I love that about your desserts.
Oh, thank you.
And and I can't tell you how many experiences I've had. I'm like, oh, I'll go have this dessert that's based on this vegetable, and I just feel like I'm eating a mayonnaise sandwich. It just fucking sucks. So kudos to your skills.
Right.
And
also did well. It was also like I had never done Asian desserts.
yeah, why would you have?
Funny story. Another funny story. These stories are all going to go together.
Yeah.
I went on a couple dates with this woman, and we went to some restaurants, and
Do we both know this woman?
Yes, and then
Interesting.
We went to. I was like, "Hey, come to Houston with me.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hong Kong Market. We
Yeah.
didn't have them here yet, right?
Yeah.
Let's go to Hong Kong Market and buy
Yeah.
some ingredients." She's like, "Philip, all you ever do is take me to Asian restaurants, and now you want to take me to Houston. Like, are you dating me because I'm Asian?
Yeah.
And you're about to get a job at Uchi?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "No,
No,
absolutely not."
absolutely not.
Funny story. I was like, "Let's fuck this. Let's go to a different restaurant."
Yeah.
And we went to at the time Eddie V's.
Oh.
And
Did you get the butter cake?
No, but she got Tokyo trout.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
It's funny.
Yeah. The butter cake.
The reason I said that is because she'll probably hear this. And I want her to know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
the butter cake's really good, for the record. I will a couple times every few years go to Eddie V's and like subject myself to the rest of the meal just to eat the butter cake.
I don't remember the. It's like an ooey gooey
Yeah, it's like
butter cake.
It's like halfway in between. I would say just like a good kind of really well saturated cake and like a coffee crumb cake, right?
Yeah.
So it's
like an ooey gooey.
Yeah, and it's just
No, I love that style.
It's like-
I love that style cake.
super delicious, right?
Are
we going off? Are we both going off? No.
Oh no, it's ridiculous whatever's happening over there.
It's something really bad.
Yeah.
Something really bad.
So I was like, well, I'm just gonna do chocolate and plum and ginger. You know what I mean? Instead of just
Yeah.
pulling the umeboshi and like, but I put together good tasting. Anyway, so I go and I do the tasting, and it's Paul Key and Boo and Tyson, and do the tasting, and then the next day is like, all right, cool. Well, come back for an interview, and then you'll have. There's this whole there's so much story to the beginning of that job.
Sure.
However, I went in for the interview. I was like, it's formality. I knocked it out the park, right?
Yeah.
And sit down, talking. And then this guy walks up, the CDC at the time. I forgot who I was. I started talking with Paul and then with Vu, and the CDC walks up. And I've already been halfway through this interview. He starts talking to me. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. My name's Deegan. You might know me. You might remember me as Fancy Tools." This is 6 years later. This guy was just like ragging on.
Oh my god, this is so funny.
Uh-huh.
So Deegan, when I first moved to Austin, I landed and I worked at Portabla, which is now Clark's, for like 3 weeks until I could get like a real job, right? Just like so to get some money coming in. Mark, the former owner there, was super nice. Like, yeah, okay. My dad knew him, so like I just worked behind the counter, and they did these little like Iron Chef battles.
Yeah.
And so Mark was like, "You want to do one against me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I fucking love competing. And so I did it. And then Jeff of Jeffries was at that dinner and was like, "Hey, we're looking for a new executive chef at Jeffries. Would you like to come and interview for the job?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, went through the whole process, didn't end up getting the job. I was 25 at the time, was not remotely ready to be an executive chef of anywhere.
Right.
Deegan is the person who...
interview?
Yeah.
That's
so,
awesome.
Small world.
It is.
A tale of two Deegans. Okay, so I want to circle back around because we were talking about kind of Instagram culture, right? And that kind of leads us to, I guess one of the topics we want to talk about is the influencer culture and how... So it's interesting to me as far as influencer culture because I think it's something that when I first came in contact with it, I wanted to be critical of it. Yeah, let's get those shoes up there, you know what I mean? And then as a business owner and operator, you start to understand there's a certain intrinsic value there, right? As far as just getting eyeballs on your project, especially if you're starting something new, right? And then I think I went through this thing of like, okay, I'm comparing and contrasting it to journalism because I think a lot of users view it as journalism, right?
Yes.
Fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think the next kind of logical step is like, well, it's not real journalism, right? And that's where I actually disagree. I think it actually is totally real journalism. Do I think it, I mean, a lot of times lacks depth? Completely, of course, you know? But I think...
That's fine. But what you're saying, which is fine, is that anybody can be a journalist.
I am saying that. And I think, and I think
And
that is
that's fine.
officially a sign of the times, for sure. You know, because I think that's what Twitter has proven more than anything else, you know, is that anybody can break news anytime, as long as it's verifiable, right? So if someone's saying...
As long as it's verifiable. You just said anybody can break news anytime as long as it's verifiable. Well, we all know that that is absolutely not true. Anybody can break news at any time, much of it being non-verifiable.
Sure. I'm saying it ceases to be news when it stops being verified. Is that fair?
No, because it doesn't cease to be news as long as people believe it.
Okay, well, yes, fair distinction. I'm just saying my opinion.
I think that's a very fucking big part of this. Is as people believe it and say it, and you have people who lack experience, knowledge, the ability or even need to go and study or learn things that they comment about. And I'm not talking about meals. I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about, I mean, and then present it as news. And then you have a portion of the population, sometimes a large portion of the population, that is like,
okay,
this morning, for example, this morning, my daughter got in an argument with me, and I don't want to throw anyone under the boat here, but my daughter got in an argument with me about whether or not medical professionals were stamping COVID on death certificates. And she said that they were.
Okay.
The government was forcing them to do so.
Yeah.
The current administration was forcing them to do so.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's interesting, sweetie. Where'd you hear that? She's like, I mean, blah, blah, blah. Heard it on Twitter.
Oh, heard it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Audiobook.
Yeah.
Twitter audio.
Yeah. Hear the scrolls.
When you have a part of the population that believes nonsense, it is news.
Well, here's the thing. A part of the population will always believe nonsense.
Right.
Now,
but when you allow anyone to become a journalist, you are opening up the floodgates for stupidity.
I don't disagree.
But I want to zero in on something, obviously, because it is very much a big part of our
business.
Our business,
sure.
the restaurant and kitchen, and food service community culture.
Yeah. So here's what I want to touch on. Just real quick. So what I think is that what has evolved, and I think sometimes a good way and sometimes a not great way, is I think journalism has always been allowed to have an opinion as long as it has been backed by facts. What has changed is that now a lot of journalism is just opinion, and that still passes as journalism. And that to me is where the convergence of the influencer culture and journalism becomes problematic, because you have a person saying, okay, I verify this thing, I like this thing, I think this is cool, and I'm putting my stamp of approval on it. Cool, great, that's fantastic, right?
It's funny that we're using the word verified, because those blue check marks make it news.
I'm doing that on purpose. And I think that's really interesting, because there isn't... That's never been the case before. That's really never been the case before, where we've just said we're actually okay as a culture with accepting opinion as fact because we agree with it.
And we will hunt down said opinions to accept them as fact. We
seek out opinions we agree with.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And that's funny, because I was actually, you already parlayed it into this bubble that we all live in our own little bubble worlds, right?
Sure.
And it's super interesting. You know,
he's a bubble boy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should all be in bubbles right now.
What are we doing here? What are we doing?
Mask somewhere.
Mine's actually in that bag over there. I'm not going to put it on.
Look at that. It's cool though, right?
Yeah.
yeah, it's become, well, I think it's so interesting because as we get into every year when there's the different awards that happen and the award season and et cetera, and then that all kind of goes right into benefit season and event season, and they all play with each other. And
Interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. And then you have this,
there's a discernible monetizable value of
right, and then
of playing the game,
and then getting in there, and you can then lead. You can be very leading of how certain outcomes are going to come. But regardless of that, like I think, I think it does. I think that again, right? It's a necessary evil to get the word out because whether we like it or not, the majority of business advertising lives in social media.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't live in the phone book. It doesn't live on commercials. It doesn't live on billboards. It doesn't live in the newspaper. Right. Where else do you advertise? It doesn't live on the radio. I mean, it does a little bit, but that's not where the majority of our population is getting it. Right. Yeah. The majority of our population, especially, from the age of 18 to 48. I made that number up, but probably, right?
It's probably 10 to 48, honestly, at this point.
Yeah. Is getting that from social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Speaking of 10-year-olds.
Yeah. All those things.
So many adults on TikTok. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I had a one-night stand with it like 6 months ago.
Never.
Yeah.
I won't touch it. There's lots of things you and I won't touch. I won't touch that you will touch.
It goes both ways.
So, yeah, when that's where the majority of your advertising lives, you have to. It is absolutely a necessary evil. There's zero doubt about that.
Let me push back on something. What makes it evil?
I'm telling you.
Okay, great.
When you start, and then you decide, well, shit, I have to play the game.
Yeah.
Because if I don't play the game, my business will not build as quickly.
My odds for success are decreased.
I lose my leverage. I lose my edge. Right. Yeah. My business may in the long. I may run a better business. I may have better numbers. I may have better labor, better food costs. I may have a little bit more longevity. Speaking of restaurants specifically, but I'm talking about any business.
Yeah.
Right. I may have. The opportunity to build a business in the way in which it builds and people come, but most people do not, right? Most people overspend, overpay for rent, get excited about a space or a concept and just go all into it, and then they're fucked, right? And then within 18 months they're closed, right? And that is the life cycle of the majority of restaurants. So you have to have that competitive edge of being in everyone's space, and the way you get in everyone's space is through social media and other web-based ways of advertising.
Well, I mean, I think, do a pretty good job of using your connections and your voice authentically to express your passions. But you're very active on social media,
I am very active on social media.
How many accounts are on your phone? 3?
4.
Yours?
5.
Yours, Comedor, Run Club,
Assembly Kitchen.
Does Ben's Friends have an account?
Yeah, Ben's Friends. Ben's Friends, awesome.
Got it. Okay.
Which I'm not active on, but it's logged in on my phone. And I want to become more active on it. It's a lot to manage, and especially through this Assembly
5 accounts on your phone, Jesus.
Through this
I'm managing 2, and it's like
this Assembly Kitchen launch, which luckily William, my business partner, has taken on a lot of that, and we're looking for a social media director. Plug.
Interesting. I was thinking of bringing someone in. We should talk offline about that because, totally.
So, it's the world we live in. If we want to remain relevant, I believe, and there will be people who will disagree with me, but you know how many people will disagree with me? 10?
10? Yeah, totally.
Because whoever's listening to this is involved in this world already.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Because where did they see this lives, right?
Exactly.
So there will be some people who will disagree with me.
You content whores!
There are people who disagree with me, but you know what? The thing is, they won't really disagree with me. They'll just agree with me on the outside.
Yeah.
But to remain relevant, you must engage. And
100%.
so that's why it's a necessary evil, because there is some evil connected to it. You know,
Okay.
it is the show off culture has changed us as a society. 100%. We are different, and it is all through trying to get that blue check mark, trying to show that your life is better, trying to, you know, and that's and do I play that game a little bit? I try to be. You're right. I try to be authentic, and hopefully I am, right? But I'm not so authentic that I'm like, and this is when I'm sad. I don't do that because nobody really wants to see that.
That's the thing. That's what's so interesting about the conversation about authenticity when it comes to being online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this thing of like, okay, we want you to be real, we want to see the real you, but we only want to see the highlights,
right?
No, and that's a real fucking thing, man. You know, and that I think,
and this is another very real thing. I was destroyed on social media.
You were.
Right, I was literally decimated. I brought it on myself, right? But but the
nobody deserves that, but you did bring it on yourself.
I did bring it on myself, right? And I was decimated on social media.
Yeah.
And on
how quickly
web-based forms of communications, it was very important to me that if people are going to look at, I had to counter that somehow if I wanted to come back, right? If I wanted to be, and when I say come back, it's not like come back and be a blah blah blah, make money and do this. It's just like feel good about myself.
Yeah, be back in the world.
Be back in the world. Want to leave my house because for a long time I did not.
Well, here's the thing: you have to take control over it. Otherwise, it will always control you.
It will.
And that's when it comes down to authenticity. I think that's something I realized is that if the way I portray myself on social media is so different than how I act and react to things in everyday life, then I'm going to get caught with my pants down. Literally.
Yeah, you very much act on social media the way you act in real life.
But that hasn't always been the case. That probably changed about a year and a half ago, right? You know, I mean, it used to be like, I'm going to like be behind this curtain and I'm going to be a chef and I'm going to post pretty food. And that's,
and I mean, and same.
And like pictures of my son and like, that's it, you know? I didn't put a picture of myself on social media until a year and a half ago.
Well, I made it more about my personal life as well, and I agree with that. And it was it was after that, because if you look at my account previous, I mean, there's thousands of pictures.
It's so food driven.
It's only food.
Yeah, it's also like a lot of filters.
Yeah, and like the remember the fisheye?
Oh my god.
But they weren't like filtered. Like they were. I mean, it was just the one filter it was the clarity filter.
I know.
You were there.
I was there
literally.
for.
I would
like half those pictures are food I made.
I was just say 30% of them were you.
I was prolific, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, I was just having so funny. Never mind.
But,
a conversation I was having with a certain real journalist this morning.
Are you saying I'm not a real journalist?
Yes. None of us are. Neither am I.
Yeah.
Do not agree.
This is fake news.
Do not agree with anything on my. All opinions on my Instagram are my personal opinions.
Yeah.
But
can you share the name of this real journalist?
No.
Okay.
There's an off the record call.
Okay.
But you came up.
Can you share that?
No. Well, you just launched
weird tease. Weird on camera tease. You know I hate this shit.
So
yeah,
but I feel like this. We've redefined, and maybe necessarily, but I at my core don't agree. Mm-hmm. But through this, we have redefined what success is in restaurants. We have redefined what really a restaurant is, and maybe that was necessary. Maybe we needed to.
What do you mean through this? Through COVID or through social media or both?
Not through COVID.
Okay.
That's a whole different redefinition, and that's temporarily, I hope. Although there will be things that will last a long time out of that, which is why we have pivoted the way that we have pivoted. Yeah. But no, up until March, over the last 10 years, we have really redefined what had a redefinition of what a restaurant is.
Yes.
And like I said, I'll be honest with you, I'll necessarily agree with that redefining of what a restaurant is.
So let me ask you this.
But I think a lot of it has to do with. It's interesting. I contribute a lot of my success to social media from the first time that I DM'd Jordan Kahn on fucking Instagram. Yeah. I mean, sorry, on Twitter.
On Twitter, yeah.
In 2014, before.
You got me on Twitter back in the day, and then I got myself. Oh no, that's actually not true. I was on Twitter
When I had a relationship with fucking Ideas in Food, and
I remember that,
and back and forth and just the sharing of information. How I was able to reach out to people,
So I view Twitter as two things, right? I view Twitter. I think really there is this. It's pre and post Trump, because I think Twitter. It
was before that, even before.
Well, I'll get there. Because the assumption of Twitter was this just really beautiful, like, sharing of information and this wide open space to connect with people, right? And then as it evolved, it got a little bit more volatile and kind of shady in certain corners of it, and I think that really accumulated with the Trump election, and that's actually I got off Twitter until this year, and I got back on it for the first time in 3 years. Because, honestly, here's what's interesting between, that time and now. I think Twitter has turned into the most reliable news source in the world, which is wild when you think about. The reason I got on there 12 years ago is to see what Shaq thought about, like, the Cleveland-Orlando series, that's why I got on there,
Yeah.
And now I go on there just for news, and like if I have like a funny one-liner, but I'll put that out on Twitter, and it gets 0 likes or retweets, and I'm like, it probably wasn't that funny, it's really interesting, because you go there for, certainly you follow certain outlets, and if you perceive those things to be, good sources of news, it's the fastest way to get that information, so you don't have to find a television or a place to consume that media. It's with you all the time. It's crazy that's what its greatest value is that now.
Right. And that's also its greatest danger.
100%, because it is completely reliant on the opinions that the user seeks and values.
So yeah,
but that's not that different in the real world, because let's be honest. If I'm at home watching Fox News,
it's just all the information is out there now, right? It's like you said, it's in your pocket at all times. It's just what information you seek
sure.
out. But back to like the redefinition of what a restaurant is, and how that sort of came about through the press of the press, the full court press of the press.
It's depressing.
I think there was a movement to change that. I can remember it.
Yeah.
Starting with fucking Roy Choi, and David Chang and these guys who really wanted to have society look at what a restaurant can mean. Is that innovative? Yes, sure. But it really skews a lot of other shit, in my opinion. Right? And I think that
it makes the conversation more volatile.
Right, which maybe that's great. Conversations are great. Perspective is great. Switching, shifting, listening to other opinions. But I think it's so interesting that the people who, through over the last decade, how it's evolved, the people that now have a voice in it blows my mind. Yeah. Right. The journalists, since everyone's a journalist now, right? We've allowed everyone to be a journalist, and it sounds like you support everyone being a journalist, has allowed us to.
My point,
it's okay, but it's allowed us.
It doesn't matter if I support it or not,
right? But it does. It absolutely does, but has.
I think everyone should be allowed to have their opinion,
right,
and have a platform their opinion if they create that platform,
right.
To me, that's the evolution, for better or for worse, of freedom of speech. And whoever chooses to listen to that.
Agreed. But it's just interesting. Criteria has changed over the years of definitions of things that to me were so, and again, this is me. This is my old brain. This is me needing to catch up. Probably this is me needing to be accepting or switch my perspective on a lot of things. Right, and I do.
Sure.
Right, I consistently try to keep up and change, and at times I try to stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
And be the innovator myself.
Mm-hmm.
And continuously redefine what things are, but at the same time, like, I have this love and drive and passion for a very specific thing, and it's what I've always been a part of. And just seeing, that's what I'm saying. It's this necessity, this necessary evil. Like, I have to play in this world, but I would go back.
No, I get what you're saying, and I think the tension between, playing the game and how inherently it is distracting from the plate in front of you is, unfortunately, those two things are really at odds. Of just simply trying to make the best food in the best environment and treat people the best way. Right. That's ultimately like the core functionality of a restaurant are those things. Both guest and employee alike. Right.
Well, what are those things? They're not anymore.
Well, that's restaurant by restaurant. You guys value those things. That's
do.
Something that
some
shows
people
through
hold
every
on
time
to,
you're in your kitchen.
Some people have definitely held on to that.
Yeah, but you're right. It's not universal. So something that is really important to me in my life, and I see you struggle with it sometimes. Honestly, is that ability to find solitude, right, and to find a moment for yourself and to clear headspace for yourself. Between being an owner and operator of a restaurant, having kids and a partner, and a lot of people put you in a lot of different ways, and of course being here for those things, but that's a full life. How do you make time to be the best version of yourself for all those things?
I don't.
I appreciate that.
And I find myself being she versions of myself for those things at different times.
Sure.
Like, it's uneven. It's right now it's imbalanced, and it sucks. And I think that has a lot to, it gets imbalanced, and it was not imbalanced X amount of month ago, right?
Okay.
And I'm sure it'll evolve and change. But I find myself being incredibly impatient with my children, or I find myself being not showing up in my relationship. I find myself being really short with my staff. I find myself. So it's not always. I don't, and I can point to a whole list of reasons why right now. And then I could look at each one of those reasons and make some changes. But I don't. I feel trapped a lot, and I feel trapped into this. These things have to get done.
Sure.
I don't have a choice.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
I do. There's always a choice.
You always have a choice, right?
But I don't.
But you've committed to being the person that solves those things,
right.
And therefore you are choosing to live up to your commitment.
Yes.
Cool.
And in doing so, I don't always do it the best way. And so there has to be balance. There has to be paring away.
So what would you say would be, if you feel like, okay, I have these things to do, I don't have time to do them all, and sometimes I can't do them the best way.
Right.
Pretty logical to say do less things. Now, I've known you a long time. That sentence is not something I've ever heard, come out of your mouth.
Let's just do less.
That
reminds me.
But sometimes doing less does allow you to do more. That's real.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And
not necessarily the thing that's most in your personality makeup.
Well, there are things that I am responsible for that if I delegate and they're not done the way that I know they need to be done, then I'm going to take it back.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And there are things, there's all sorts of external factors that play into that I let overcome me, which I shouldn't. Right? And, you think by now in my mid-40s and through all of this shit and through finding some peace and solace in my life through sobriety and a little bit of feeling better about myself physically, and feeling better physically both and spiritually, that I would find this. But it's very true. I still struggle with the balance. I struggle hard with the balance, and I let it consume me and overwhelm me often.
How do you?
And so what I try to do is try. The run club's a great example of that, but we haven't been able to do that recently, and that's been hard for me right now.
So would you say that those two things are pretty connected as far as that pull away from structured exercise, that pull away from community, and then invariably filling your time with all of the curveballs that are coming out of COVID?
Yeah.
Because that's right. Because
I think that people, especially in our industry, and I'm sure other industries, but I only really know ours, so that's why I speak on it so much.
And you're a medical expert.
And my medical expert, I have some scrubs.
Yeah.
Is
I don't want no scrubs.
is I feel like we are seeing a genocide of something we love, right? Like there's a huge emotional attachment to this that I think gets overlooked or just not even paid attention to, right? Because we're trying to figure out how it's going to be okay, right? How are we going to make some money? What are we going to sell? What are we going to do? And I think that we need to have this moment of, wow, like everything we love is being destroyed right now. My life is restaurants, right? And like we're almost going through a genocide of this.
Yeah.
And so it literally feels like a death at times. And if I don't stop and mourn that and understand why I feel this sadness, then I'm doing everyone and myself a disservice by that, right? Sure. And so there's an emotional attachment to this I think we need to realize. And when you put that couple or just pair that emotional attachment with the fact that, yeah, my gym's closed. Yeah, I can't run with my group. Yeah. No, we're not doing bench friends in person anymore. No, I'm not getting the high off service that I crave because I don't get other highs, right? All those things that have balanced my life are now missing and then have been replaced with
one thing.
I mean, it's a million things all leading to one thing, right? And it's like, and there's so many fakes and jukes and lists and change and change, right? And I am not that person. I like a list. I like to follow a routine. The list, and I like to, and I can do it, and I can fucking create and innovate. But I create and innovate out of necessity and structure. Yeah. That is how I do it, right? Am I a creative person? Sure. I create once I've figured this out, and then I'm bored of it. Then I'm like, all right, let's do it a different way, right? But I don't start doing that creation until I've really fucking figured it out. Right? Yeah. So like I am used to the routine and the structure. I need it. It makes me work. And then, so when you remove that and you have this emotional thing that we're dealing with that is not really kind of on the, we're not really thinking about, I mean, a little dramatic, but the Gabrielle Hamilton article about, will it even matter if my restaurant ever comes back, right? Yeah. Super well written. She's an amazing writer.
Sure.
That kind of conveyed that sadness, especially. Did you read the article? So that first paragraph of burying your kids, and we're burying things we love right now.
Yeah,
and it's going to systematically continue to happen through the middle of next year. Yeah. We haven't even seen it yet. Yeah, like some places are pulling the plug way too early, as far as I'm concerned, but they know what's going to happen. Yeah, right. And and we haven't even seen the death yet. Yeah, it's like. I know I'm coming, and that's please no insensitivity of actual people's death, which is also happening. Yeah, right.
Well, that's what's crazy.
But that hasn't hit me. That has not hit close to home for me. Yeah, thank God, and hopefully it never does. And but I feel for those who has. But that's the death I'm seeing. I'm seeing the things I love, the people I love who own businesses and open restaurants and put everything into it, losing their businesses, and that's so incredibly painful. And so,
well, we get into this business, I think, for a lot of different reasons. But those of us that stay in it, what we realize is that the thing we value more than anything else is the ability to be of service to other people and to change someone's day, right? To say like this thing that I can do, this skill that I have that I've worked really hard on, can fundamentally change someone's mood emotionally, right? And whether it's service or a dessert or a piece of goat or what have you, right? It's honing that skill set to be able to really just take someone's complete emotional state and point it in a different direction, And that's something that we kind of ironically have not probably done the best job of doing for ourselves. Yeah. Right? And so we're left being asked to do that right now with all these fucking curveballs, and the one thing that we rely on to give us that lift we don't have anymore. Right. It's hard.
It is hard. And I think that we need to be a little more empathetic to that and to each other through that, and understand like, hey, when I walk in and I'm to the kitchen, I'm like, why are you moping? Yeah. Well, I know why you're moping. Yeah. I know you don't want to be putting shit in a vacuum bag. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's not like, oh, you should be happy that you're working. A lot of people aren't. It's like, man, this sucks for you. I get it. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Yeah. I understand this sucks for you. It fucking sucks for me too. Yeah. We have an opportunity to stay alive, and we actually have an opportunity to create some new things. Yeah. And we have,
Totally.
And we will continue to do so. But like, I think we need to have that moment of like that daily kind of literal moment of silence for like, man, this is really shitty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
You know, what's really funny is that I had this moment today. I was thinking I was putting stuff in bags, just as you said. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm so grateful and excited that I was able to take this first step in building this business. And yet at the same time, I have never felt more strong and resolute for it to be a physical space, right? And to get back to that fundamental connection between human beings sharing space, time, and experience with one another. You know, it's one of the most powerful things in the world. And